welcome back to the Detours in Music podcast. My name is Laura Rupel, and today we are starting our 5th season of the podcast, which will feature arts administrators. And today for episode 1, we have Sonja Thoms, the Vice President of Operations at the Nashville Symphony and the creator of the network Orchestra Careers. I hope you enjoy.
I'm Sonja Thoms, and I'm Vice President of Operations here at the Nashville Symphony. I also created orchestracareers.com.
Yes, and that is a site that helps lots of people, and we will talk about that, I'm sure. My first question is, how did you get your start in music?
Well, I come from a very musical family. My parents are both musicians, and I have 2 brothers who are also musicians. And so my parents started me on music lessons at an early age, actually on recorder. And then they said, "You'll play the oboe." And so they handed me an oboe at age 9, and that's how I got my start. Wow.
I guess having musician parents, they kind of knew. They're like, oboes are good.
Well, it's funny because they said, actually, they thought they wanted me to play flute, but then they said there's too many flute players in the world already. So how about oboe? And I said, that's great. What's an oboe?
Yeah. When did you realize that oboe was something you actually wanted to pursue, or music was something more than a hobby?
Around junior high, so I think it was about 7th grade, my parents got me a new teacher. My dad reached out. We were living in Chicago, and he reached out to Ray Still, who was the principal oboist of the Chicago Symphony for 40 years and was teaching at Northwestern. And my dad is a pretty bold person, and he called him up and said, "I think you should hear my daughter." And so I did an audition lesson with him, and he took me on as a student at age 13. And within like that first year of studying with someone like that and hearing that there were jobs like in orchestras, I was pretty set by age 13 that is what I wanted to do, was be a musician in an orchestra.
Yeah, I think that teacher-student relationship, of course, means kind of everything for us as private students, but especially when you're studying with the top caliber possible from a young age, I think like the puzzle pieces will just come together so much faster. An oboist question I have is, how old were you when you started making reeds?
Oh, I think Mr. Still started me kind of like watching him make reeds. And so I'm pretty sure by high school, I had my first kind of like toolkit, like set of knives and stuff. But wow, reeds have always been a very difficult part of playing the oboe. And so, but by high school, I was trying to make my reeds, and he would still give me reeds. And then my later in high school, we moved to LA, and I studied with Alan Vogel, who was the principal oboist of the LA Chamber. And so, the process continued of trying to make reeds, but occasionally, getting reeds from him. And so, but by college, you're on your own.
Yeah. Where did you attend school, and why?
I auditioned at just a few schools. Eastman School of Music, which was actually where my dad went for composition, and USC, which was where Mr. Vogel was teaching, and I think also Northwestern. So it was kind of the colleges I knew and that I knew people at. And so ultimately I went to Eastman School of Music in Rochester, New York, fell in love with the school and the studio there, but also knowing my dad had gone there and my mom grew up in Rochester, I just felt like that was an obvious choice. That was the place to go. So I went to Eastman.
Yeah, and you had one more oboe giant to slap onto your resume,
Absolutely. Dr. Kilmer, still, I had a chance to reconnect with him, and he is still the same energy, but that was an incredible 4 years with him.
During your undergrad, were you developing these skills of, now you work in operations, so I'm curious what you were like as a student and how that kind of translated into people like observing you, like, oh, like she does this other stuff, or how was that looked about in your life?
Yeah, I think when I remember back going to undergrad, going to music school for the first time, being able to just focus on oboe and playing, it was like a dream. I was soaking it up. And so I was the student that didn't say no to anything.
Mhm.
If it meant playing my oboe or being with friends that loved music the way I did. And so early on, though, I remember my freshman year, the oboe and bassoon studios got together for a double reed holiday concert. And knowing this was going to happen, I don't know what spurred this on me, but I asked my teacher if I could arrange 3 Christmas carols and conduct it.
Okay.
So here I go orchestrating, like arranging 3 Christmas carols, and I conducted it. I don't know what it was, but throughout, that's kind of set the tone for my undergrad. It was like,
Mhm.
I just wanted to be in the mix of everything that everyone else was doing, but also if there was something I wanted to do, I was just going to make it happen. And that
Yes.
usually meant having to organize, usually meant having to kind of think proactively,
Mhm.
and also get my friends together to do what I wanted to do. The other one that sticks out is I really wanted to play, and this was probably about my sophomore or junior year, the Mozart Symphony Concertante for oboe quartet, woodwind quartet and orchestra. And
Mhm.
you could book the main lobby at Eastman for a lunchtime concert. So I booked that and I got the part somehow. I rehearsed somehow. I conducted from my chair, and it was just because I thought it was fun. And I
Yeah.
somehow had the skills to think about what was going to be required to
Mhm.
actually pull it off.
Mhm.
So I had no idea I was doing concert production or personnel management or librarianship or any of those things. But I think it really was born out of I wanted to make things happen, and I just winged it probably for the
Yes.
most part.
Yeah, I think I mean, you and I have talked about this too, but a lot of times when I talk to other students, I'm thinking like, well, a big idea, everyone has ideas. Like when people ask me about even this podcast, I'm like, well, I mean, I'm sure you've had an idea. The difference is sometimes I'm like, no, I'm gonna do it. Like nobody needs to tell me to. And then in hindsight, you go, oh, well, I have done these things that other people haven't, and I've really enjoyed it. And yeah, there's a place for those skills, definitely. What is some advice you have for younger players? That can be people maybe thinking just doing orchestra or people thinking about branching out.
Yeah, I get a chance to talk to a lot of young musicians who are in college, and I think it starts from a place of they ask themselves questions like, oh, do I really like this?
Hmm.
I think we don't know it until we're in it, right? I didn't know it until I was in grad school and at Rice, and now I was going to try to win a job.
Right.
And once I was in it to try to win an audition, I was like, whoa, I think this is a lot different than I thought it was going to be.
Hmm.
And so it starts kind of from that moment of like, uh, maybe uncertainty on my part, but I think it's okay. That honestly, what I'd like to say to my friends out there who are having those questions, it's okay to ask those questions and not be sure that the path you thought you wanted to be on is maybe not the path you want now. And
Yeah.
I was right there because I actually did not know where it left me if I
Mhm.
didn't want to try to win an orchestra job. I thought that if you don't perform, you teach, and if you don't teach, then you go be a banker or like a lawyer or something else.
Yeah.
And so I really didn't understand that there was this whole world of life and music that didn't necessarily fit in those 2 boxes.
Hmm.
Um, so I would say if you start questioning things, lean into those questions and
Right.
honor yourself in those questions by exploring what you're interested in. And even if people look at you funny,
Hmm.
like find people who are doing things in their careers that excite you or that you're curious about, and just talk to people who are doing things that maybe don't seem to fit in the boxes that you were told there are.
Right. Yeah. I think I've spoken with people about how for classical music, we don't really have graceful exits. It's like you said, we have like this ramp going to an audition, and then maybe you tell your teacher, like, I don't know if I want to perform full time. And then it's, okay, well, do you want to teach? And then the conversation just has an awkward silence. Um, we also will like maybe look down upon ourselves in that idea of, well, if I don't make it, like, what was all this for? Am I a failure? Am I no longer a musician? But like you said, it doesn't have to be like that.
Those questions really resonate with me because I was really thinking, wow, I'd spent the first, 15 years of my life in as an oboist
Hmm.
thinking there was only one thing I wanted to do. And now I wasn't sure that was what I wanted to do. And what does that make me? Am I a failure? Am I, and I come across and I'm really eager to meet my next generation friends
Hmm.
where they are asking those questions. I say, no, 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 there's a whole new world and you are well equipped for it, because I think a lot about the musicianship that I have and what I've learned
Right.
being a musician and how it actually informs so much of my life off stage.
Hmm.
And so I'm eager to meet students when they're asking those questions and like kind of catch them or walk alongside them to say, oh, this is great. Now we can really begin the fun work of figuring out where you want to fit in this big world of, let's say, an orchestral industry.
Right. Do you consider yourself a musician now? And do you feel like what you're doing is completely separate from that? I know you're just touching on that, but.
Yes, I like to say I bring my oboist self to work every day. And
Mhm.
as vice president of operations at a leading orchestra, uh, my life is spent backstage and supporting the musicians of the orchestra and overseeing the logistics of our concerts on the stage.
Mhm.
And when I'm helping to plan a season or I'm helping to execute the concert season we're in, I need to understand that stage setups on stage matter.
Right.
The conditions matter. Having audience in seats matter. And,
Mhm.
and so my oboist self really does come to work with me every day. And it was not a quick transition for me to be okay with that. I mean, when
Mhm.
I finished grad school and I didn't have a job and I didn't know what I was going to do with my life, um, long story short, I ended up getting an operations internship at the National Symphony at the Kennedy Center. And I
Mhm.
realized, oh, there's people that work backstage at these orchestras that I wanted to win a chair in.
Yeah.
And so then I found my path into operations, but and it was actually at the Pittsburgh Symphony I got my first job, but that was a total 180 from where
Mhm.
I thought it was going to be. And I really wanted people to know I was an oboist.
Yeah.
And it was really hard because I felt like I was not succeeding off the stage with this new administrative position where there was all these expectations that I was really scared I wasn't going to meet, because all
Mhm.
my life was in a practice from up
Right.
until then.
Mhm.
So yeah, it was not a quick transition to having that mindset, but I do rely on my oboist self, but also even more so, rely on what musicianship has taught me
Mhm.
about, you know, honestly, collaboration
Mhm.
and working towards a common goal and the shared experience of music.
Right. The skills from playing oboe, the things we talk about all the time, like self-discipline, time management, collaboration, respect. We learn a lot through sitting in rehearsals, that can translate into other fields for sure.
Also, the love of music, right? I
Hmm.
think what has kept me going at the toughest times
Hmm.
was because I love orchestral music. And
Hmm.
that was born out of youth orchestra, right? I don't know if you remember those youth orchestra days, but those pieces I learned, man, I still know every single note of
Hmm.
Brahms 1, Bartok Concerto for Orchestra, Tchaik 4, like Le Tombeau de Couperin, like those pieces I learned as a young musician are inside of me forever.
Hmm. Hmm. Has your career change, like how has that kind of driven detour moments in your life? And I don't refer to detour as a failure. It's more just a different path, more unexpected. But sometimes even that word kind of triggers people. So I'm curious. I think you have a very good example of an obvious detour, but even within your field, that's a whole other world.
Yes, I really appreciated how you prepped me for this conversation, and I've been thinking a lot about this word detour.
Hmm.
And I can't. The first image that comes to mind is you're driving down the road and there's that big orange sign, and you're like,
Hmm.
"Wait, what?"
Yeah.
And a lot of times even our map apps on our phone are going to try to keep us pushing down that road that you can't go down because it's
Yeah.
closed, there's construction or there's paving or whatever, and so you're forced to turn.
Mhm.
But what I've realized, and I'll get to answering your question, but
Yeah.
what I realized in that moment is that we're forced to go another way. We don't know where it's leading us. We
Mhm.
actually, our maps are telling us to still go back the way we thought we were going to go,
Mhm.
and we can't see around the corner, right? We just have to follow the signs.
Right.
And yet what experience happens there too is my brain is still playing out, but I should be going down that road because then this will lead to there and I'll get to where I was going. And if there's like this connection and this like
Mhm.
lack of willingness to let go and just
Right.
see where it's going to take you. But in those moments, once I kind of surrendered to the fact that I have a detour, then my whole new world is opened up and I
Mhm.
see a new path, I see new surroundings. And so really there was a point in my career early on when I was, I wanted everyone to know that I was an oboist, but I was
Mhm.
also not doing a great job as operations coordinator. And it
Yeah.
was about a year in, and my boss sat me down. She's a good friend now. And she said, you're not cutting it.
Mhm.
Well, we know you can, but your head's not in the game. And you have a choice this weekend. Go home and think about if you want this position or not, because we're going to find someone who does.
Right.
You don't.
Mhm.
And so I came in on Monday and I said I would be a fool not to learn everything I possibly could from the Pittsburgh Symphony. And
Mhm.
it was at that point I accepted the detour. I surrendered to this new adventure that I had not been planning on.
Right.
And I just embraced the ride. And here
Mhm.
I am in my 18th season in operations, and it has been an absolute thrill, but it was scary.
Mhm. Yeah, like when you mentioned following the signs, it's we can be aware that, oh, I need to, in this season of life, it looks like I need to change, some plans or something, but we're all afraid of change. And, when we're used to seeing maybe the same landscape, even for our social lives, our work lives, we kind of become blind to some things. And then when you're in that new path, it might take a while until you open up and say, oh, well, that's a nice scenic overlook over there I wouldn't have gotten to see. Or yeah, like this job I can learn a lot and I'm not fully embracing it. So sometimes the new signs, take a while to flash our attention.
And detours require humility,
Hmm.
whether you're ready or not. And I think about that a lot because I think that there's been a lot of detours in life, personally, professionally,
Hmm.
some tragic, some, unexpected and good. But I think the process that detours requires of us is humility and reconstruction, with like kind of a new environment. And so I'm grateful for those. I don't regret any of the detours. They've not been easy,
Right.
but I wouldn't be who I am today without the detours that I've experienced.
Right. I'm curious if there was ever a point in your career where you were maybe thinking, you know what, I think I'm gonna try to get an oboe job again. I think I'm gonna go back to just being a performer. Did that ever happen for you?
Yes, actually, a couple years in, I was really keeping up my oboe chops. I was practicing where I could. My family are all musicians, like I said, and so my
Mhm.
dad's a composer, and we often get together and perform premieres of his works,
Mhm.
actually. And so for early in my career, before I had a kid, I was still playing a lot of oboe, and actually, I prepped for an army band job. I
Yeah.
was really trying to. I did a couple military band auditions because I was really intrigued by those. And so I didn't get any of them, but I was practicing out excerpts, I was making reads, I was doing mock auditions, I was doing all the things. And I even took lessons from the oboists in the Pittsburgh Symphony. And it was just a really incredible time when I think back on it. I don't know how I managed it all actually. But it was really a cool transitional time, I think. And then at a certain point, I was given so much responsibility at the Pittsburgh Symphony years in that it really kind of, I started to transition oboe to, I'm going to do this forever because this is a part of my life, but I'm going to do it for fun and I'm going to do it on my terms. And so then it kind of transitioned to, playing with family or playing in church, or honestly playing at nursing homes or playing Christmas carols at the VA or things like that. So it's much more on my terms and the ways that I want to do it. And for me, that's just not being a professional. I have lots of colleagues who are on the administrative staff who freelance still on their instrument when they want to. And that just, in the end, that wasn't what I wanted, the way I wanted to pursue it, because making reeds is hard. And yeah, absolutely. I still enjoy playing oboe. I consider myself an oboist for life. And I don't make reeds anymore. I've got a lot of friends from college who have their own reed making businesses, and I will gladly pay them all the money in the world to make reeds for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think something special about music that we can kind of lose when we're in that trajectory is that this is also something that's fun for a lot of people and was fun for us, like only fun for us when we first started. And we can leave an institution or leave the workforce of orchestral playing and actually still play and still have fun. And it doesn't need to be something that we only do with others or only is at this high grind level.
Absolutely.
And what brought you to your job at the Nashville Symphony?
I was at the Pittsburgh Symphony, like I said, for about 9 years. And by the time I left, I started as a part-time operations assistant. And by the time I left, I was director of operations and touring and had a chance it was such a thrill to be able to plan, manage, and go on multiple international tours. And but I was there for about 9 years, and I was just starting to feel this pull to learn from another organization. I felt like I could have stayed and continued to grow, but I had been hearing a lot about the Nashville Symphony, and I didn't know anything about Nashville. I'd never been to Nashville. So in the end, I applied for a job that I have now, and wanted to just learn from another organization because they were doing slightly different things that I was seeing at the Pittsburgh Symphony. And so in the end, I got the job, moved to Tennessee, and I've been here since 2015.
And then what are some of your goals right now, either personally or for the Nashville Symphony, stuff like that?
Yeah, for the Nashville Symphony, it's, we're in our second season back from the pandemic, and it's feeling so much more secure and much stable. It doesn't mean that we don't have a lot of work ahead of us to continue to rebuild audiences and bring in new audiences, but I think the level of playing on stage is as good as it's ever been. And so that's really exciting. I think we're all in the industry trying to figure out how to make this life and industry sustainable.
Right.
And that's me included. I love this work, but it's also really hard and really demanding, and the challenges never cease. Like it's we're performing arts is a very challenging but rewarding industry to be in. And so I think for my organization and for myself, the answer is almost the same: is how can I keep doing this work that I love, but I'm changing as a person. I'm a mother of a 9-year-old, and my needs change, and I'm really just trying to figure out how I can continue to evolve this work so that it's sustainable for me, because I want to keep doing it.
Right.
But it's requiring me to think deeply about how are my needs changing, and how do I need to kind of reshape how I show up and what I need from my organization as well. Parallel to that, orchestracareers.com was a website I started 3 years ago, and It's because I didn't know my job existed till after grad school. And so I've just felt this intense passion to share and shout of all the possibilities working for an orchestra, really to our next generation leaders like yourself. Like I was so surprised that this was a job and I didn't know what it really meant to be working at an orchestra. And I felt like I had gone through 6 years of music school and there was so much I didn't know about the orchestral field. And so orchestracareers.com, what I try to do is first just be an information desk in a way. I've got a YouTube channel. I interview my professional friends through these free Zoom events where anyone's invited and to come learn about production and operations or marketing, or we have a conversation about the things that we all care about, like building a network or work-life balance was our last conversation. And so what I've really, those Zoom events were born out of the pandemic, because when the fall of 2020 hit, I was thinking about my music student self and seeing the headlines of my orchestras that I wanted to try to be in, crashing and crumbling.
Right.
And so in an effort to try to reach out and say, we're still here, we're working so hard to make sure these orchestras that you love and that we love are getting back on our feet and we're going to play again. Those Zoom events were a reaching out, even for myself. And so what's really awesome for me to see is in this effort to kind of just build awareness, honestly, a community has emerged of my professional friends and my next generation friends who love this industry, but also want to get connected sooner. And I want to, because this industry is a really exciting place, but we have not done a good job of inviting students and equipping them fully to understand how to enter it and feel ready. At least that's not how I felt. And so one of my goals is just to continue to grow this community that I have now of Orchestra Careers, which is students and professionals, all who care about the future of the industry and recognize that building relationship now across those lines is so beneficial, because the next CEO is in undergrad right now, and so I've really been thinking a lot about that. And honestly, this industry isn't just mine or yours or our musicians of the orchestra or our staff of the orchestras. It is everybody's. We're just stewards of this amazing art form. And so Orchestra Careers is just kind of centered around that. And it brings me inspiration and passion, and I'm very driven to open up and unveil any mystery that there is behind the inner workings of a professional orchestra.
Right. And I think the platform of Orchestra Careers, and then, like you said, the Zoom events that maybe started because of the pandemic, that's one of the benefits from that is now we're all accustomed to Zoom and used to using it. And I know I've benefited from watching some of those conversations taped, on your YouTube channel. So, it's just broadened it all the more. And it's, like you mentioned, a free resource, and you have kind of the backlog exists. So there's no like, oh, you missed our event, you've opened up all the doors for people to kind of see and learn what they are interested about.
Thanks. I appreciate that. And I think it's really important to me that it remains free and is accessible, and that we are stripping away as many barriers as possible in order to help people find their best fit career at an orchestra, on stage or off stage. So I really appreciate you mentioning those things. And I think it's also it gives me something to point back to as this does grow and I get to talk to more and more students. I can say, hey, you want to learn more about marketing? Watch this video. And anyone in that video knows that they're ready for you to reach out to them. And so that's the other condition of anyone of my professional friends who engage in this work, is they are ready to build relationship with the community as well. And I'm so grateful for that, because I cannot do this work on my own. If you find yourself at a point of detour,
Right.
it's scary, and
Mm.
it's easy to feel like you're alone. And so what I would say, and this is not an approach I took as my younger self, was in those moments, reach out, like
Right.
lean into community and do not isolate, because um, we've probably all reached that place of despair in those detours. And
Mhm.
that is really a scary place to be. And I think that if you find yourself at a place of detour, reach out.
Mhm.
Reach out to me if you have no one else to reach out to. I believe that I've come to believe that a lot of things in life are hard, but when we have people around us that we can walk through those hard things with, we're going to make it.
Right.
When we isolate, or when we think we're alone and no one cares and we don't reach out, and we're not reaching out and watching out for our friends who might be isolating, like
Mhm.
that's where really desperate things can happen. And so just reach out on the detour, because it's much more fun to like be on these adventures together rather than taking it on by ourselves.
Mhm. Something I know I've been reminding myself a lot and having reminded to me is, I don't know everything. And you never know what someone's going to say. And you never know, like, if someone in a conversation is going to say something that turns on a light bulb in your head and makes you think of something you've absolutely not thought of. So I know in my season of life, I am trying to reach out a lot because I'm having enough of those. Oh, I hadn't thought about that. Like, maybe if I keep doing this, like something new will emerge.
Curiosity is always a healthy thing in the, because it requires humility of us as well. I don't, and honestly, you're just trying to learn and trying to absorb, and you don't always have to take on everything that you learn. You can pick and choose, but the wider perspective you kind of grow for yourself. I certainly don't know everything, and but that curiosity has really brought me in a lot of really great directions, and like where we're sitting today, right? I think that when you pull the thread, not knowing where it's going to go,
Mhm.
of something that's interesting to you and that you care about, wow, it's going to lead you places that you never imagined and that are better. And that's hard for me, a planner and someone who likes calendars, timelines, and checklists, and
Right.
likes to be in control of things.
Mhm.
It's good for me to exercise that curiosity and letting go.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Sonja. I really appreciate speaking with her because it is just so apparent that she loves what she does and is so respectful of everyone interested in what she does and just truly wants to help out anyone in this field pursuing the traditional path or the non traditional path. And I do encourage all of my listeners to check out her platform, Orchestra Careers. It's extremely successful. And like she mentioned, you can actually contact anyone, that's done anything with them. And that's such a benefit and such a privilege. And we talked a lot about humility and curiosity in this episode. And reaching out isn't always the easy thing to do, but I think we both encourage everyone listening, sometimes we need to ask these questions to a different audience or talk to somebody new and just learn about something, and you'll always learn more about yourself in the process. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you catch our next episode.